Thank you very much. While my panelists are taking their seats, one thing we're curious about as we're about to talk about integrated marketing and the omnichannel customer is getting a sense of those of you in the room. How many of you are B2B? B2C? Nonprofit? Government? Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I'd like to introduce our panelists this morning, and then I'm going to get in, or this afternoon, and get into a definition of to set the context for today's discussion. Let me begin on my right with Karen Perucha, an account manager with the Marketing Strategy Group. She's a seasoned marketing and communications professional, experienced in developing integrated marketing campaigns in both B2B and B2C, with a progressive background in PR, social, and content marketing. She's built a track record of successfully applying traditional with non-traditional media, and recently won a Gold Sponsorship Marketing Award for one of her integrated marketing campaigns. Next, we have Tara Robertson, who's the Director of Demand Generation for Uberflip, a content engagement platform that helps marketers create remarkable experiences for every stage of the buyer journey. Prior to Uberflip, Tara worked in various B2B marketing roles at Scribble Live and Polar. And finally, Mircea Baldin, who is the CEO and founder of MeetVibe, a mobile and Internet of Things SaaS company, enabling proximity and micro-location interactions. Previously, Mircea headed the Global Asset Management Digital Strategy Group at the Royal Bank of Canada, and before that was a digital marketing program manager and knowledge manager for the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce. So on behalf of everyone, thanks for joining us. And now with it, I want to jump into setting the context for today's discussion. And so from our perspective, for our discussion today, we're going to define integrated marketing as a blend of traditional and emerging marketing spanning online and offline with multiple customer touchpoints. However, we want to highlight that we do not see integrated marketing as being strictly about broadcasting or messaging in a single direction anymore. It's now more of an exchange or a dialogue between customers and brands and organizations. Based on the results of things like the rise of social media, user-generated content, and influencer marketing, and one of the other attributes that we'll talk about as well today, audience fragmentation. So with that context set, I want to jump into the discussion, and I'm going to kick things off with Mircea. So as someone who's brought a startup to market, can you talk to us about what you've done from executing an integrated marketing initiative or strategy with limited resources? I think that for those with smaller enterprises or limited resources, that perspective would be welcome.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And hi, everyone. My name is Mircea Baldin. Indeed, so I represent a small company, a young company, and obviously we have limited resources. Our view is we always try to create synergistic partnerships on the B2B level to actually increase our exposure and increase our reach. And the example I would give you, a few weeks ago, back in April, we've organized a selective event organized at the Toronto Stock Exchange. We've invited a selected group of companies to open the market, to ring the bell. And that was actually a fantastic event for most of us who were there. I was actually surprised that TMX responded to our call. Maybe one day one of these companies would actually go public. And the event got quite a bit of coverage, PR coverage on Business Insider, on Yahoo Finance. Now, one of the outcomes of this, of course, all these companies, all of us, we have socialized the event through our social networks, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, that sort of thing. And to us, basically what happened, the outcome of this event was to strike a partnership with a Fortune 100 company, Oracle that is, and we just announced it a couple of weeks ago, giving us tremendous exposure in terms of having access to 2.1 billion people to promote our product, to put our product in front of their audience, their market. At the end of the day, we're also helping them as well. Again, we're a mobile and Internet of Things company, so they get to learn a few things from us. My point is always try to be part of something bigger, to reach clients, to get new clients, and to get new visibility.
Great, thank you. Tara, given your work at Uberflip, where you're helping companies reach customers in disparate channels through content. I'm wondering, from your perspective, what you see as the top challenges in reaching that omni-channel customer. You have the cue.
Sorry, tell me if this is on. Oh, good, it sounds good. So just to add on to what you just said, I think partnerships are huge for us. They're one of our biggest lead drivers, and we encourage our customers to do the same. But in terms of getting content to different channels, I think the toughest thing can be getting budget internally to try new things, especially with things like social ads. So we encourage our customers to take a small portion of your budget, either it's like 10 or 15% of your budget monthly, and use that to try something new. And then once you're seeing results, you can make the case internally that this is something that works, and you can kind of go from there.
Great, thank you. To build on that, Karen, from your perspective, if budget, ads, and other methods have to be used to reach this omni-channel customer in an integrated way, what, from your perspective, have you seen that's working in an integrated marketing approach?
Yeah, when you're working with a very limited budget, you have to really think about the strategy and the planning, and really think about the fundamentals, right? So who are you targeting, what are the messages that you're seeking, and what is the action that you want people to do? And so if you have a limited budget, you can allocate that depending on what that research shows. So whether it's be social media, whether it's through influencer campaigns, maybe it's a wire distribution, or a combination of all those. But you have to really figure out what the fundamentals are.
Great, thank you. What do you see as challenges that still exist, Marcia?
So some of the challenges that we're seeing, and it's probably not so much about challenges, but kind of where things are right now, especially from an omni-channel segmented market. Basically what happens, 70 to 80% of the decisions, the buying decisions, are still being made in the moment within the store when I'm browsing through the aisles. So that's still a huge percentage. And the experience within the store basically is I want to get in and out of the store while purchasing what I want, and I want to potentially avoid other shoppers and get in and out as efficiently as possible. The other 20 to 30% of the purchases, which are obviously more important, are being researched. We take the time to do that at home, in our office, and so on. So we do the research. It's not impulse buying. It's not in the moment. They are not routine purchases, and so the experience is fundamentally different, right? So the challenge becomes how do we reach these people within their current context. I mean, they're in the store, and I can be tempted to buy more than I actually initially wanted to, or actually I want to take my time and feel comfortable with my current decision.
Thank you. Tara, with Uberflip, content marketing has been really sort of in the online domain for most of its existence, although there are examples that precede it. But what I'm wondering is, so if the umbrella of content marketing falls predominantly online, where, from your perspective, do you see traditional marketing, integrating with that?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. So events are still huge for us. Even as a startup, we spend a lot of our budget sponsoring events just because we know if we reach people in person, they're that much more likely to trust us and build up that relationship. And we're not selling something that people are going to buy directly on our site. It's a SaaS software product, so it's something that takes multiple touches. They're meeting with the sales team multiple times. So anything that we can do to meet those people in person is always great. And just one example is I was at Marketo Summit a couple weeks ago, which is a huge, obviously big event for us, and we got probably over 2,000 leads in just a week, which is a lot for our team to handle. And now it's kind of my job to figure out how do we follow up with all of these qualified people and make sure that we're not wasting that budget that we just spent. So that's a really big challenge for us.
Would you categorize some of those events into educational versus social versus what? Can you expand on what types of events you've offered?
Sure, yeah, so we
hosting?
generally sponsor events that we know our customers will be at. So we choose events like Marketo because we integrate with that platform, so that's why we go there. We do participate in things like case studies and panels at those events, but the goal is usually to meet with customers and prospects in person. So not exactly educational, but we kind of try to get that in there where we can with case studies.
Great, thank you. The one other question I wanted to ask was, just still building on the traditional marketing, is there anything more that you could add to that, Karen, on the traditional marketing side? And its integration to online and emerging.
Yeah, I think I'm not the digital marketer. I come from a very strong PR and communications background, but that's the world we're living in, where digital leads. We're now leading with digital first, but I still think that in the traditional mix, I'm a big believer in earned media, getting that third-party accreditation or credibility, that third-party source. So getting your story out in the Globe and Mail or hyper-local blogs, whatever your audience reaches, I think that's still a very credible source, and adding that little umph to your brand. And it doesn't have to be right away. It could just live in digital space, and then when somebody looks up your brand, they're going to notice all these other articles that pop up. So there is that element of traditional marketing that also, or traditional marketing that works for. That complements the integrated piece.
It just it resonates more when people are seeing third-party validation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. Jumping back to you, Tara. Uberflip's on the leading edge of content marketing. What else are you seeing that's emerging that you're taking note of?
Sure, yeah. So in the B2B space, I feel like there's a lot of really fun things happening right now. The biggest one that I'm seeing is kind of a trend back to one-on-one relationship building. So it used to be the case where when we were getting prospected by another vendor, they would send us like a cheap t-shirt in like a size large, and clearly that didn't work for me. So now we're seeing things like one of our customers actually sends custom pairs of Nikes to their high prospects, and they find out what size they are, what colors they like, and they send those instead of wasting the same amount of money on like 10 t-shirts that won't fit. So just kind of that trend back to more traditional one-to-one high-touch marketing is a really big thing right now in B2B, especially as account-based marketing is such a hot topic. I feel like that's a really great way to accelerate those relationships.
For anyone who wants to send me a pair of shoes, I'm a 10.5. Thank you. Jumping back to you, Mircea, who do you see that's doing a good job? Who's a shining example of integrated marketing? And why?
And then before I jump to that example, one of the things that we are really excited and kind of dovetails on what you were mentioning, Tara, is the proximity technology. So being able to reach people and the concept of micro-location on the ground in the moment, we think it's very powerful. This is why we're really excited about bringing this such technology to market. Now, going back to who do I think does a good job, the example I would give you is the Starbucks Rewards app. And there we have three channels basically. I can charge my account over the phone. I can charge my account in store, or I can charge it myself online. Right? So we have three channels. The end experience though converges on my mobile device, and so I can actually continue to purchase from Starbucks regardless of how I choose to recharge my account.
Great, thank you. Karen, from your perspective, who's doing a good job?
I think Lululemon is doing a really good job. They recently just launched their first global ad campaign. They used Vice Media's Virtue to create the social campaign, and so it brings back the messaging of what they're about. It's bringing yoga off the mat, and so they've brought their purpose back into a higher level. But even before this, they've done really well in integrating a lot of their key messages from the top and bringing it down to even their sales staff. So their sales staff knows all the key messages. They are the internal brand ambassadors. They're lovers of the brand. You go into their retail space, all the pieces are movable. So there is that flow in the as you shop. So you've got visual, you've got interaction, you can touch everything. There's excellent customer service. And then they also have a really good e-commerce site and user-generated content, and as well as their community outreach, right? So they offer discounts to their external brand ambassadors, the fitness groups, the yoga instructors, but then they also offer free classes in their stores. So it gives another opportunity for their customers to come into the store. So I think they're doing a really good job in all those different touch points.
Great. I don't know if anyone's been following the news, but the founder of Lululemon has Kit and Ace.
Yep.
And they made inroads into the US, but now they've retracted. So I'm wondering whether, the folks that are running Lululemon now are, from an execution, they get it from a multi-touch point, and maybe, I can only speculate on what the reasonings were behind Kit and Ace retrenchment here to Canada, but we'll see what happens. And your thoughts on who's doing a good job?
Sure, yeah, just to add on to the Starbucks example, I love that one. But I'm not even a huge fan of Starbucks coffee, and I still find myself using the app almost every morning just because I know I don't have to talk to anybody, I don't have to wait in line, and I can get a coffee before getting to work, so that's really important for me. So I think the best omnichannel, especially in B2C, is just taking away that friction, so people that might not necessarily be an everyday customer are now becoming repeat customers.
So rule number one, don't talk to you before coffee. Okay. Depending on the level that's left in the cup.
And then to add on to the Starbucks, just speaking about the brand, it's everybody talks about it in the marketing context because it's one of those stores where it's like, what other store do you go to where you're like, oh, I don't even know what I'm going to get yet when I go to Starbucks, right? So it's like, even before you go to the store, you have no idea what you're going to get, but you're going to get something. And so I think from that thinking, a lot of people look to Starbucks for that example. And another thing that Starbucks is now doing that's great is they are starting to use their cups as a content platform. They're going to be I think they're taking on New York Times, I believe, and they're going to be putting some messages on their coffee cups, which is a great idea because everyone's carrying these cups around. And then they've also released an extension on Outlook, where you can set up coffee meetings at Starbucks. So it's really an integration of work and just getting to know your customer.
I've got an example of myself. It's a bit of a niche one. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Shazam app, but to raise awareness for Alzheimer's, the app was actually forgetting songs on purpose. So I think it's an interesting integration of what we often use on a daily basis, for music discovery, but also at that point of discovery, we're also learning something, or we're getting a reminder. So I thought that was an interesting example, albeit niche. Now let's flip things around. Marcia, from your perspective, who's doing it wrong, or missing opportunities, or making missteps?
Well, to some degree, marketing, in marketing, sometimes you are taking chances, and it's not like, you're doing right or wrong, but sometimes things can fire back to you, backfire. So the example I would give you was Mattel, the manufacturer of Barbie, and then they had a model called Hello Barbie, I think somewhere at the end of 2015. And then what the company tried to do at the time was basically to reach beyond the transactional point to understand better the customers. And what they've done, so they've built this Wi-Fi enabled Barbie doll that would actually record the voice of your child for future interactions. So what does that mean, first of all? How are we gonna protect the privacy of my kid? And how will you actually, what will happen then? So how would the next version of the Barbie, what are some of the action that the device can actually take? So that, parents kind of, freaked out at the point, and I would do the same, obviously, going a little bit too far. So trying to understand, taking smaller steps, try not to cross any boundaries, have the customer, give them an option to be in control as you're pushing technology and as technology gets better and better. So I think that's a good example.
Where brands can be a bit tone deaf, shall we say?
Potentially.
Well, if we think of Pepsi and I can bring peace to the world by handing out
Right.
Pepsi. Some of you may have seen the riots in Berkeley, and there was a meme where someone was literally going around handing out Pepsis in hopes to quell the riots. But anyway, it was just essentially mocking the Pepsi brand. So for anyone who works for Pepsi, I'm sorry, but it's just an example of what was in the media. Tara, from your perspective, who's doing some misfires?
Sure. So this one's a little bit outdated. I'm pretty sure they fixed this by now. But last year I actually bought a broom on Amazon, and
Sorry, a broom?
A broom, yeah. And for months after, they were following me with retargeting ads for other brooms, and it just didn't make any sense to me because who buys more than one broom in like 2 months? So it's one of those examples of like they had enough data on me to know that I was looking at brooms, but they didn't connect the dots and see that I had actually bought one. So that's kind of a silly one, but it would be very easy to sell me things like maybe a mop or a vacuum, but instead they were just following me around with the same product that I had just bought. So that was kind of a weird one, but I'm pretty sure they fixed that by now.
I think we've all gone through that where suddenly Amazon...
Did someone say no?
No.
I think Amazon may think you're going into the broom retail business or something.
Maybe, yeah.
What happens to us, you buy something, I agree, the same thing is like, I bought it, why do you continue to remarket the same thing? I'm done, the transaction is over, they're not closing the loop. From your perspective, Karen, who's doing a bad job?
Well, luckily, I think, I can't really remember any, but now that Tara mentioned her story, I think there's a similar story with Walmart where a woman bought like diapers or something, and then they sent her, congratulations on having a baby, and then she was like, I'm not pregnant. So yeah, it was a pregnancy, there you go. So that's one. But most recent example is probably United. Just the way that they've responded. They've just lost focus of who their customer was. And so again, it's just coming back down to the fundamentals and knowing, who your customer is and just really fine-tuning those messages.
It was really sad to watch United with every opportunity in the days that followed the incident. With every press release, it just kept getting worse. That there seemed to be a disconnect between internal guidance and again, it's just another example where externally people were feeling the brand was somewhat tone deaf, challenging nonetheless. Wanted to talk to each of you about your own experiences with integrated marketing and what your experiences were, what the outcomes have been, and anything that surprising that you learned through the process. Why don't we begin with you, Karen?
Sure. So last year I was with an agency and we had I think I can mention it. It's so we sponsored the client was Two Oceans Wines, and we sponsored the Bachelorette Canada. So with that, there was the big sponsorship of the whole Bachelorette campaign. So there was that sponsorship part. It had TV ads, and it had social media, with earned media as well, and influencer marketing. So our job was to figure out what kind of mix worked with that. So during the what really worked well was that we wanted to make it a real national campaign. So we identified about 10 influencers working with us. And then also reached out to the Metro News, 24 Hours, Toronto Stars of the world, and hit them with a media kit. So we provided everybody with this home viewing kit of like how you can enjoy The Bachelorette with Two Oceans Wines. And then also during the shows, we were able to give out social media prizes. So there was the instant grat part of that. The overall campaign was a success. It outblew any targets that we set. It increased sales by about 10%, 15%, and engagement rate was through the roof. When people were, using the hashtag Bachelorette Canada, they were automatically hashtagging Two Ocean Wines, even though there was not, the two were separate. So I think it was a really good campaign.
Anything unique that you discovered in the process?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be really hard, but I guess it was just very organic. So we had structured all of these, messages and these tweets and everything, but you kind of just have to go with the flow. And I think that was, that was one of the key learnings for me.
Great.
Yeah.
Tara, from your perspective.
Sure. So last year, my team actually threw our first big event in Toronto called UFX, and that's probably the best example of an integrated campaign that we've done. So we went from we were still doing both at the same time, but trying to sell pretty expensive SaaS software to selling tickets to a 2-day event. So it was a totally new challenge to all of us. And we used tons of different channels, so email, paid social, reached out to local press. We partnered with a lot of the key speakers at the event to get them to help us promote it. And it went really well. We had about 300 attendees, and it was a team of 8 of us working on it, so it was a lot of work, but it was a great experience. And then after the event, we decided to package up all of the recordings, and we called it an encore. So a lot of our customers are in the States, and they couldn't make the trip up here for the event. So we used that chance to kind of make them feel like they were part of the event. We packaged everything up into one nice interactive PDF, and they could click through, watch all the presentations, see all the slide shares. And we also used that as a lead gen tool as well. So I think it was over 1,500 leads from just that one asset, which was really great for us. And again, we used our partners and sponsors of the event and the speakers to promote that as well. So really great results.
Oh, fantastic. I actually attended the conference, and I'm going again this year. So
I saw your ticket.
You didn't have to market to me this year. Mircea, from your perspective.
So an example I would give you would be basically the power of cash as an incentive. And we're a consumer internet company, the endpoint with the consumer being a mobile app, iOS and Android. And what we've done, again, we put on our B2B hat, and we've partnered with Gartner. And Gartner runs one of the most popular app review sites called Volterra. And through, they actually have a program where they would actually give away either a Visa card, a prepaid Visa card, or an Amazon card to consumers who are willing to leave a meaningful review on their website. So we've run that program for a good month, actually. We made sure we socialized this upcoming campaign within our community. And I think we got really good numbers. So we're talking about 66% awareness level, 20% interest level, and then conversion rate was somewhere about 12%, which was pretty good for us. Even the people at Gartner were surprised by this number. The benefit for us was actually getting that deep insights, getting people to care and take the time to leave a meaningful review, things that they like, things that they don't necessarily like, and again, I would highlight try to figure out what's in it for the consumer at the other end, and in this case, cash worked.
Cash works in many instances. What I'd like to do is open it up to questions from the room. Does anyone have questions for anyone on the panel? And we'll pass you the cube. Not everyone at once. No? We'll see if we can spark. I want to share one example. You talked about cash and delight. You talked about Starbucks. I'll just share a brief anecdote from my past. So on Saturdays, my son was taking a class, and every Saturday I would drop him off at this class. I would go to Starbucks and do some work, and I would check in on Foursquare when checking in on Foursquare was still a thing. And a friend of mine tweeted back to me, said, next time, why don't you check out Aroma Espresso across the street? So the next week, I go into Aroma Espresso, and I tweet to them, hey, Aroma, I'm here to check you out, how you doing, kind of thing. They responded, but Aroma Espresso Canada was not online at the time, so someone from their New York office responded and said, welcome, enjoy your stay. And then every week, there was a dialogue between us. Every time I showed up, like, hey, Aroma, did you miss me? And actually, when I had asked them that, the hours passed with no response. They responded and said, sorry, we were on a plane, and couldn't reply. And so the dialogue just went week after week. And then one day they tweeted to me and said, send us a DM with your address. And so they sent me a DM, or I sent them my address, and in the mail, a gift card showed up for $20. Now, it's not that it was $20. It was the fact is, I have never had a single exchange online with Starbucks whatsoever. But I've now told that little anecdotal story about Aroma Espresso to thousands for $20. So when you think about touch points with your customer, if you can think about how can I delight my customer with something small and memorable, you might be surprised at just how far that will go. And so that, I always give that example of how Starbucks, as big as they are, felt perhaps for whatever reason we're big enough, we're known enough, we don't necessarily have to delight anymore. And some new entrants, if you're a new entrant to your industry, you can delight and be disruptive for, as you were highlighting earlier, for a nominal amount of money. So I don't know if there's other questions, or we can wrap things up for the day and we'll move over to the keynote. But last chance for questions for those of you.
I have a question.
Sorry?
I have a question.
You have a question? Go ahead.
Are you still the mayor of that Aroma location?
Sorry?
Are you still the mayor?
On
The mayor on Foursquare.
I don't remember if I ever made it to the mayor. I remember there was someone who worked for Foursquare. Two people that worked for Foursquare were in a constant battle for the mayorship of a taco restaurant in New York, and the mayorship was just constantly toggling back between the two of them. I mean, that's where social gamification all plays a role. Foursquare has rebranded itself, repurposed itself as a data company with a $100 million valuation. So gone are the days of checking in, buying a coffee at Aroma or at Starbucks or wherever it might be, and now they are a data company. And so your business model, your touch points with your customer are testing points of your business model. And so they've evolved as well. So actually an interesting question. I never made it to a mayor there. It's been so long ago, I don't know if I was mayor of something, but I don't know what. Anyway, I want to thank you all for your time, and I want to thank my panel as well. Enjoy the rest of your day, and if you have questions when we disperse, feel free to approach us. Thank you.